Carrots, waitress, winner, waitress, waitress, winner, waitress, 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 screen, witnesses. Note the counting frames. William had a libretto that he'd written, and he contacted me and he said, look, I have this libretto, I really like it, I'd like you to work with it because you're the person I think could make sense of this and do something with it. And the idea being that you can guide people through the exhibition. Have we have the moon? Have we have the studio? Have we have? Have we have the book flying backwards from France? Have we have the coffee pot? Have we have the ladder? Have we have the charcoal dust? Then we create the performance together. So I'll go off and do my work and then we come back together and he'll tweak it and I'll tweak it and he'll send it that direction and I'll then send it that direction. So, I mean, that's the nice thing with William because he's a visual artist and a writer, I think, but he's also a director and he loves creating theatre. So, and that's the lovely thing working with him in this way is that you're working with 5 different Williams, but it's all the same William. And I'm the same, you know, I'm a musician, but I'm a performer, but I'm a dancer, but I see myself very much in a visual art context. So you're bringing out all the elements in somebody and in yourself as well. I like to be generous with people and I like a performance to be warm but odd. And so I think in a sense, rather than showing a work, it's showing William's entire world and showing that to people and allowing them to enter into that. And so actually, in a sense, almost halfway through the exhibition, the guided tour of the exhibition, I sort of almost become one of his art objects. And so the audience can enter into who William is as an artist in a bigger way. I mean, that's the interesting thing with William is that there can be some beautiful humour and then you don't even need to scratch the surface, but it's like, and there's another meaning to that which can really hurt. And I think with my voice and his libretto, it's trying to bring elements of that in as well, because there's something lovely about just singing a song or saying a text which is on one hand sounds like complete nonsense, but it can be quite emotive. And I think that's the nice thing with William's work too, and I think with mine as well, is that people, there are openings there, and people often will find a connection, and sometimes it's hard to know why, but people find a connection with his work. And as a performer, that's an important thing for me to do as well, that I really have a connection with the audience, and whether it's sadness or anger or love, or that you can have that connection. And that's why I feel quite comfortable being a tour guide, because when I'm on stage as well, I love to have that connection with the people in the audience very much. And so this is just a few steps closer, I think, yeah. I think we're not against interpretation. Everything will be interpreted. I think what's dangerous is if something is pushed to be given an interpretation, like this is what it is. And every artist with a brain, every artist is scared of that, because then you write a book, you know, you wouldn't even write poetry, you'd write theses, because there will always be interpretations, but the layers are like that, and that's what makes art interesting. And also because there's an element of mystery there, And so some people there'll be some things that are very clear, but then there's a big world that isn't, and then some people will have a very different interpretation, and I think that's what makes art really interesting. And I think William would feel the same way too.
That's what I said! That's what I said! This is how come that's what I meant! That's what I said!
And I think it is really useful that people know some of the background. And also with William's work too, where a lot of it is drawing on South African history, and not everybody knows that. And I mean, I'm speaking about the treason trial, it's mentioned. And I mean, every South African knows what that is, but not everybody else does. And that of course that helps. Some things that aren't that important, other things that would be good to know. So in some ways, I don't think this is replacing that sort of knowledge. It's broadening out his world in a way that I think is important because of the sort of artist he is and the way he works, which is really very much, it's very fluid, and it's not I am a painter or I am a printmaker, or I mean, he started at Jacques Lecoq Drama School in Paris, you know, and I think was doing puppet shows. I mean, beautiful puppet shows that were pretty, I think, heavily inspired also from the politics of his country and the fact that his parents were both human rights lawyers. So he's come from a world that should remain fluid, and also with me, I studied early music, and I'm working with dancers and visual artists, and I think nowadays, and it still happens unfortunately, you should not have to categorise what you do too much. As an artist, you should just be able to go off, and if you're going to paint one day and write a book the next, that's fine. And I think the nice thing with William is that he's got a frame or a world where all of these things can happen and interact, and it brings in a lot of people from so many different areas, and he can work with all of them in very different ways to help create this bigger thing, which might be a painting, it might be a film, might be a theatre piece or a performance. You don't want to lecture people too much about a piece of art in the fear that that suddenly becomes the reading, which I almost feel is impossible actually, because we all have our own eyes and our own histories and backgrounds.
This is the exit.